I like very serene. I like going out in snowstorms when nobody else is around and just shooting these moody cityscapes. Very polar opposite to how I was when I was a celebrity photographer.
You are listening to Photography Conversations, where Tomash shares with you his comprehensive interviews with passionate photographers and the most innovative photo industry leaders, developers, and influencers. This podcast will help you stay an inspired and well-informed photographer.
He worked as a street cleaner. He photographed Michael Jackson. He worked as a garbage man. He photographed some of the most successful cycling teams in the world. He worked as a DJ in a nightclub, and today he has one of the best-selling street photography books in the world. Hello, it's Tomash, and on today's show I am talking to Phil Penman, British photographer living and working in New York City, about his fascinating career, about transitioning from being a paparazzi to being a street photographer, about his book called Street, about ethics in street photography, and about his absolutely stunning New York images. Enjoy my conversation with Phil Penman. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Very happy it's happening. I have your book called Street in front of me. 2 decades, right, of your photographic work, capturing all possible facets of New York City and of your own work, curated down to 220 pages of your best images. So street photography, your celebrity work, landscapes, cityscapes. Wonderful book. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's I've been shooting since I was about 15, so coming on 27 years now. But I moved out to New York in 2000, and the work in the book is more kind of my transition from moving here, shooting 9/11, working as a celebrity photographer, and then moving more into street photography. So yeah, it's about 20 years of 20 years of my life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was, like looking at your work, your photography, your reading your story. It's pretty remarkable. Well, like, what kind of experiences, you had as a photographer, what kind of all possible things you were capturing with the camera, and somehow it's still everything ties together that you can put it into one book. I think it's great. Question. Let's start with the cover. So there, you chose a photograph of a gentleman. And I'm talking, of course, about the street book, right?
Yeah.
You chose a photograph of a gentleman standing on the 42nd Street, wearing a suit, carrying a bag, and having a bunch of leaves on his head, which basically makes his face completely invisible, right? So why this particular image for the cover?
This actually was chosen by the publisher. Like when I started working with a publisher called Clarati, and it was made very clear during the meeting that, look, not everything is going to be your own way. We're going to have disagreements about things, and this is a joint effort. And I trust their judgment because they've done a lot of books in the past and they've won awards, and so I kind of trusted their judgment. And I remember I was driving down to a job in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden I got an email with, here is what we would like to have as the cover. And when I saw it, I was like, great, because that's actually the image that I would have liked to have seen on the cover anyway. And it was just funny that everybody kind of came to the same conclusion that was the image that they wanted.
Nice, perfect. So is it an image which in a way like encapsulates for you, New York City?
Great. Yeah. It's, I love, I walk around all day, and being on the bike when I was working doing celebrity photography, you just because you're all over the city, you'd see the great characters walking around. And one of the things I like to do is I would go up to these people and just, I wasn't looking to shoot candid or anything like that. It was more of my work is kind of just street portraiture. So there's so many of these people that are kind of like this, just interesting people. Some are seeking attention, some are completely shocked that you even want to talk to them, let alone take their picture. So it's a good mix. But the first portion of the book is all street portraits, and I just thought it was a kind of a nice way to lead into it.
Do you like vividly remember this particular conversation with this gentleman?
This gentleman, I think I was just hanging around taking some pictures on 42nd Street of one of the buildings, and I turned around and he's just stood there. I was like, okay,
it's like bizarre, right?
Yeah, it's like some weird trip, and so no, it's just like, oh, I've got to grab this, and normally you ask people, and some are just, no, I just don't want my picture taken. This guy, he's like, yeah, okay. Normally, what happens as soon as you ask anyone to take the picture, they'll strike some stupid pose, or they'll do a peace sign or something. And I don't know. It's not what I'm looking for. All I want is just a straightforward, standard portrait. So I said, no, just stand there with your briefcase to the side, because to me, the fact that he's in a business suit, he's got his briefcase. That's what kind of grabbed me.
I mean, it's strong because it's kind of, normal and absolutely weird at the same time, right? So let's rewind a little bit. So you started, your photographic career as a celebrity photographer. We can probably say paparazzi. Is this correct?
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, my photography career started as a local newspaper photography in England. I was doing everything you could think of: shooting politicians, kissing babies, check presentations. Then I moved on to a hard news agency where we would be shooting, crime scenes, roadside accidents. And then I went into corporate photography, where I was actually the corporate photographer for Microsoft, shooting all their corporate directors. And then, the goal that I always wanted to live in New York. And I was on a job one day on a stakeout, and it was 11 o'clock at night, covering some very no name British celebrity. And the guy that I was working with was sat in the car, and he said, "Oh, you should call up my friends Kevin and Gary in Los Angeles." So I called them up, and sure enough, they had a job. They, I think within like 2 or 3 weeks, I was working in Los Angeles. And then after 6 months of working there, kind of shooting celebrity, paparazzi work, portraiture, they had me move to New York to set up their main office for them.
Yeah, wow. So it's like a really dream came true, like immediately in a.
Yeah, it was tough.
In a blink, right?
Yeah, it was a really fast learning process. There's no messing around. As soon as I met the guy off the plane, it was like, this weekend you're going to be photographing Pete Sampras's wedding. There I am thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to be like an official photographer at Pete Sampras's wedding. It's like, no. What you're going to be doing is you're going to have a camera stuffed down your pants, and you're going to be walking around the Beverly Hills Hotel trying to find the bride. And sure enough, she came out the front door with her dad, and there's me with a camera down my pants, with a whip this tiny camera out, take a picture. Like it was a old film camera, like a candid one. And I remember her dad came up to me and was like, "Why are you taking a picture?" And he knows full well why I'm taking a picture. And I said, "Oh, because she looks very pretty. That's all."
Yeah, I can imagine all those possible reactions you were getting from people from the situation, from the bodyguards and so on. I read some stories you shared in some of your interviews. So such a different kind of work, right? Work as a photographer, because when I'm looking like in reminiscence, I mean, I'm looking at your photographs today at your street, beautiful shots, moody, cityscapes.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, because so basically you have this talent, you have the amazing eye, but working as a celebrity photographer, is working in a incredible speed, sometimes having probably half a second to get the shot right.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, how did you feel at those times? How are you combining your aesthetic, let's say, compositional ideas and feelings with this pressure? Is it
Oh.
even possible to combine those
No,
aspects of being?
I would say the paparazzi celebrity side is, I never wanted to do it, but it was my access to be able to work in the US. And, photography, a lot of photographers are losing their jobs right now, or have been for years. And it was, which is going to be the last part of photography that's standing. Most of the industries that I knew have all gone. So it was
Mm,
a question of, you want to make money or go and do another job. And I've done pretty much every other job you can think of at some point in my life. And, I wanted to stay over here so badly. So I was willing to do the job, but I was,
mm,
depressed. I hated it, especially if you have any aspirations as a photographer and you enjoy taking pictures. So I would say for about 15 years, no, say 10 years, I was more consumed with just making enough money to pay the bills and stay in New York. And then it wasn't, I was so depressed, angry all the time that
mhm.
I bought myself a Leica M7 off a friend of mine and just started trying to think of projects. So I took to
Mhm.
taking pictures of the guys that I worked with.
But somehow, to be honest, I can't imagine that you went for 10 years being depressed. I think probably.
Oh, you should see. I think paparazzi guys are probably some of the most angry, miserable people you'll ever meet in your life because no one wants to do it.
But you had your cycling right on the side.
Yeah, that was kind of I could take my aggression out on the bike.
So you photographed biggest names, right? Lopez, Kardashian, Tom Cruise, Angelina Jolie, and so on. And today you mainly, or correct me if I'm wrong, maybe exclusively work on creating some truly beautiful street and cityscape shots of New York, producing books.
Yeah,
When and
I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped.
Mhm. So what was it a transition? Like when did this transition start for
The
you?
transition the transition was really strange, to be honest. I think around 2015 I broke, just snapped. Couldn't take it anymore, and I had a friend of mine who was a salesman for a cycling brand called Castelli, which is like an old Italian company that make cycling clothing. And I just said to him, "Look, do you have any jobs, anything at all?" And he said, "Yeah, sure enough, actually, I have a job as a salesman selling cycling clothing over the northeast of America." So I said, "I'll take it." So I found myself getting up at 5 a.m. every morning till about 11 at night, dealing with cycling teams, selling them this clothing. We had Team Sky, which was one of the big Tour de France teams that we worked with. And I went over there to New York and I shot a photo assignment. It's not like I stopped taking pictures, but what I did was the jobs I would take were jobs I wanted to do. So celebrity portraits, features, and I was doing these two jobs at the same time, and it allowed me to transition out of the paparazzi world into just trying to build up an income shooting purely street, and it allowed me, to have healthcare,
Mm.
um, to be able to make a living, but at the same time shoot and build up my street photography.
So are you today making your living, exclusively as a photographer?
Yeah, I quit the cycling job once I knew that I could support myself purely based on just street photography and doing books and selling prints. As soon as I knew that I could do that, I quit.
So you are a living example actually of also of a person who, many people believe or argue cannot exist. Actually, a photographer, a street photographer. I don't know if you define yourself as a street photographer, but probably you do. I mean, the title of your book is Street, shooting predominantly street and cityscapes, and you are a living example, walking example of a photographer who can make a living, being exactly a street photographer, which many people argue is absolutely not doable.
It's doable, but are you willing to put in the 20 years of doing something that you don't want to do to get there? You can't just say, "Hey, I'm going to become a street photographer tomorrow."
So in the very end, you are saying that this, your celebrity photography career, 10 years of doing that, helped you establishing yourself as who you are today, as a completely different kind of photographer.
Oh, definitely. I think you learn things from all walks of life. Learning how to deal with people. I worked in a nightclub for years, working behind a bar and DJing, and interaction with people in the club. Uh, I was a street cleaner. I worked as a garbage man. All these different jobs that I've done in my past, working on a farm. I find that all of these experiences have, added up to, how do you treat people, which can help you in your photography when you approach people on the street, or finding some common interest. I always find when I'm doing portraits with people, I always try to find some common ground, something that we can discuss with each other, and it makes them put them at ease. So yeah, definitely helped the paparazzi, because I was on the bike all day looking around the city. It showed me parts of the city that I wouldn't necessarily have seen before, and it also helped me get all these street portraits that I probably would never have seen.
I think we could make this our today's conversation here way shorter if we would talk about things you didn't do in your life, right, Phil? but it's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I did many and still do many different things apart from also being a photographer, and I couldn't agree more that all of that we do comes through, and kind of our photographs are full of what we have done in our lives so far. I couldn't agree more. Being the celebrity photographer and now street photographer, still I'm trying to dig here. Do you see any parallels or similarities between these two genres of photography?
There are certain aggressive tendencies, I would say, that certain street photographers have. It's weird because when I was a paparazzi celebrity photographer, a lot of the work we were doing was very in your face. I wouldn't say that we got into arguments all the time, but you were definitely very intrusive. The demand for the pictures is so big, we couldn't keep up with the public's demand for it, and there are certain street photographers that work in that same way, but they're doing it with regular people rather than celebrity. And I'd actually find that some street photographers are a lot more aggressive than paparazzi photographers. But I know that has never been my style. I'm not one. I was when I was a paparazzi, but well, believe it or not, actually, when I was a paparazzi, most of my work would be very, very long lens. But if I had to, it would be short lens stuff. Like if there were other photographers around, you wouldn't have a choice. But with my street photography, I'm more standoffish. Like I said, I prefer to do street portraits than I do jumping in front of their face and blasting them. I like very serene. I like going out in snowstorms when nobody else is around. I'm just shooting these moody cityscapes. Very polar opposite to how I was when I was a celebrity photographer.
So the times of shooting Brad Pitt on his boat from the bushes are over.
Yep. Thank you.
You shoot Leica, right?
Yeah, predominantly all Leica.
And what is your lens of choice or focal length of choice?
I don't have one. This is something that I've been learning a lot about with certain street photographers recently. Is there seems to be this divide. A lot of people don't realize, like, if you're a working photographer, the two lenses that you would always have were a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200. These were like the gold standard. Every photographer had one. And a lot of my work I shoot on a telephoto. I like to compact street scenes. I like to shoot long shots. The other lens that we would have is a 16 to 35. So I tend to shoot. I have a 35 Summilux 1.4, a 75 f2, and a 90 to 280 that I use on the Leica SL.
So you're mixing things up,
Yeah,
basically.
I don't think in terms of I'm going to go out and just shoot 35 mil, because I actually feel that you want to show a bit more depth in your work as well, and I don't want it all to look formula, like everything is shot with a 35 mil lens. That's maybe somebody else's style, but to me that's not my style. I like to show, like I said, more depth in my work, maybe some close-ups, maybe some wider shots. There's no one formula.
Would you say in general, are there any main elements, that draw your attention, or elements that you are looking or reacting to when you sense a possibility of making a great street image? Is there something you could define? What is it that makes you react?
I like to create scenes, as in not set something up, but I'll go out, like if I know the weather's going to be really, really, really bad, I'll use that as my scene. And then when I'm out in it, it's like, a friend of mine defined it as it's like an opera where you start slowly building up the scene. I'll have maybe a backdrop of the city under fog, and then I know that it's going to be a foggy day, so I'm like, all right, well, what do I want to use as my foreground? Maybe today I want to use near the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm going to have that, and then I'll slowly start introducing people, elements, maybe silhouettes, maybe someone with an umbrella, and then the next element you'll start adding, well, what do I want that person to look like? What kind of character? And I might work a scene for an hour, shooting different perspectives or waiting for the right person to come through.
Okay, so it means you are rather this kind of photographer who pre-visualizes things and then really, kind of like you said, builds this setup.
Yeah, those are more kind of for me. There are pictures where it happens within the blink of an eye and you get it. 2 or 3 of my best images, I think, from last year were pure lucky accidents. I was waiting for a particular picture to happen. There was one where it was a foggy day, and I'm looking down one of the street avenues, and I'm trying to get a picture of a guy walking across the middle of the street with, his umbrella, and he's silhouetted. And I managed to get that picture, and then I'm going through my pictures on my computer, and all of a sudden I find this frame where a car has driven in front, and the window has framed somebody perfectly walking with an umbrella. And I couldn't have, if I went out there today, I could not get that picture. And it was just a pure luck. And people were like, wow, great timing. Like, you gotta be kidding. There's no way I could have ever got that shot.
Yeah. This was, I think, remember this picture was quite recently on your Instagram account, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a driver sitting in the car, and then there's a guy behind. There's a vertical shot, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's the scary thing is, I'm learning as well that people do set stuff up like that, and I find that I just can't even comprehend that you would go out and set up street pictures.
Yeah, this would be a completely different approach. I have these discussions quite often with photographer friends. Like, the first reaction we have, or like I have when I'm browsing through let's say your website or to your Instagram feed. I mean, I see images, right?
Right.
I see this image, and of course, the very first things that happens is I react to an image. To be honest, I'm not the kind of person, for example, who would immediately start analyzing and wondering how and which way was it staged. I just like the image or not. But as you say, there is something behind. There's something behind the image which only you know, which only the photographer knows, and we are going into ethics here, right? Almost like
Oh, definitely.
so. This is a very thin line to walk. Do you happen to have your book somewhere within the reach of your hand or not?
I don't. I can grab it if you can wait 1 second.
I mean, or you probably remember the image. I mean, I don't think you remember the page numbers, but it's page number 190. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's this passage, kind of underground passage in the Central Park.
Okay.
There is a fountain in the background. There is a dog on the right side, and the woman. Referring back to the conversations we just had. Do you remember if this was a?
It's snow in the background, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I know.
So I can, when I now look at this image and think about what we just talked about, it's you saw this beautiful light and reflections, and you were basically waiting for things to happen.
Well, like I said, I knew the weather was going to be bad, so I went out in the snow. I hadn't shot Central Park in a while, so I figured I would go there and have a look around. I'd probably spent a good 30 minutes shooting silhouettes of people walking through the passage, and then I was walking away to leave, and it wasn't until I left that I spotted the reflection, and that's when I got the picture that was different. That particular place has been shot many times.
Right.
It's a popular spot. The thing that I liked was the fact that the snow creates this backdrop where you're basically losing everything. So you're isolating your subject in the foreground so that you don't see, all the trees in the background, or the boats and the restaurants that are in the backdrop.
Absolutely,
there.
yeah. No, it's a beautiful image, beautiful
Thank
atmosphere. You. Really love it. You shoot predominantly in black and white, but like once in a while you produce and present a color photograph.
I know, that's just when the camera goes wrong, to be honest.
Well, unless you're shooting with like a monochrome, then it should not go to that bad, right?
Right. I have a monochrome, and I have the SLs that I use, and obviously if I'm shooting for a client, then everything's color, and we make it black and white later. But if I'm going out purely for myself and I just want to have fun, I'll take the monochrome out.
But the images in your personal Instagram feed, there is some of them, exactly the percentage is way lower, but there are some color images. So what does it take for any particular image for you to decide, to leave it or to make it a color shot?
Well, certain things, if you're looking at neon color signs, then obviously to me it works better in color. I'll usually have a color body, like I'll take the SL body in my bag with me. And I don't know, I've also found that a lot of it can be dependent on my mood as well. Like if I'm, like I said, angry or depressed or stressed out, a lot of my stuff might be very, very moody looking black and white images. And then I found myself shooting a lot more color recently. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little bit more grounded and not as angry anymore. So maybe
yeah, but it's nice. It means it's everything is a reflection of your inner self, right?
I think so. I think it comes out in your work if you don't think about it too much.
There is one absolutely amazing photo I adore, and for those of you listening, I will have the links in the show notes, so make sure to go to Phil's Instagram account. And there is a photo. You posted it on November 4th last year, and I don't know exactly where it is in New York. I have been to this city a few times, but I couldn't tell exactly. But this is this long avenue, also snowy evening, I would say, and the street is full of red lights.
Oh, yeah. Looking,
Beautiful.
it's
Just love it.
looking. That's Madison Avenue. Um, it's funny because we're talking about ethics, and the Leica UK, they just posted that picture up a couple of days ago, and the person who handles the Instagram account actually contacted me and said we're having a lot of questions by people saying, was that picture manipulated? And I'm just like, um, the way I look at it is either you got it or you didn't, and that was just, well, it was lucky, but you make your own luck. Like I chose to get up at 3 a.m. in a snowstorm. I chose to walk around the city and look for images, and that was probably shot at like 6 or 7 a.m. on Madison
Oh,
Avenue.
so this is AM. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was very very early in the morning, and there's no, another reason you get up early is because you don't want any cars in the shots, or you want to make it as so that you can stand in the middle of the avenue and not see anything. So yeah, that was just, again, lucky that I waited there for maybe 10 minutes waiting for the traffic light patterns to recycle and for waiting for a person to walk across the street.
Beautiful shot, really. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's the street photography at its best. Yeah. Let's get back quickly once more to the book, to street. So when you released it, it immediately or very quickly made it to the top of the street photography book listing on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I,
Did,
I was kind of
did,
shocked.
yeah, exactly. Did you expect? You didn't expect this success?
Not at all. I I wasn't told anything. I was looking on Amazon. Uh, a lot of the, believe it or not, a lot of the stuff I find out is from people through Instagram saying, "Hey, I just saw your book in such and such," and I have no clue, no knowledge of it at all. So when I was looking on Amazon, I saw that there was a number one next to the book, and I had no idea what it was. So I clicked through, and it was like number one new release on Amazon, and
Mm-hmm.
there were some, big name photographers that were also in that list. So it was pretty shocking that they had pre-sold that many.
No, great. I just checked, out of curiosity when preparing for this interview, how is it looking today? And it's still on the very top, in the top 7, I guess, books on street photography. So congrats. I mean,
Thank you.
uh, what does it mean for you or maybe in other words, why did you decide in the first place to put your photography into a book on paper? What did it mean for you?
I think you just want something in print. Digital is very nice, but it's digital, and there's something different about picking up a book. I'm sat on the floor right next to a pile of 10 books right now that I go to, Arnold Newman, Sebastião Salgado, and Avedon, and there's just something nice about going through a book or holding a print, having a silver gelatin print on your wall. You can't beat it. I remember when I was printing in the darkroom, the thrill you would get from that.
Do you believe the paper is the final destination of a good photograph?
Definitely.
I saw, I found out about your work. I found your website, your Instagram account. The moment I found out, yeah, you have a book out, I knew I had to get a book
Awesome.
because
Thank you.
I knew, it will elevate the entire experience and appreciation for your shots to completely another level. Yeah, and I was not disappointed. So I'm happy on the same page.
It's funny because a lot of believe it or not, I think a lot of my better work actually I shot since I did the book. And I was I think probably two of the images that I shot last year are two of my favorite images I've ever shot, and I couldn't get them in the book. There was one in the Oculus in New York that a black and white shot on the
Hmm.
monochrome, which I like. What is probably one of my favorites, and then the one you were speaking about earlier with the traffic lights. And
Hmm.
I'd love to do another book one day, but it's doing a book is a big undertaking. Like we went for about 1,500 images to get it down to what we did, and there were a lot of images that I would have liked in the book, but the publisher didn't necessarily want those ones in the book. They had a certain look that they were going for as well, and like I said earlier, we were going to have disagreements.
How long would you say the entire process, from the moment you got the idea, would be great to have a book, till, the last email or last photograph was sent and the, last page was designed? How long did it take, the entire process?
About a year to do. And, that's working with a publisher that does a lot of books. I know some photography books can take 2-3 years to do. So, I was hearing from somebody at Aperture the other day, and some of the books might take 4 years, to produce a book, because you're going back and forth with the photographer. I'm not a publisher. I don't know how to lay out a book. So I'm not going to try and tell them how to do their job. That's why you are hiring them, right?
Exactly. Now they definitely did a great job. Also, the way the book is produced, and it's just so everyone listening, Street by Phil Penman. I will have the links to everything in the show notes. Phil, thank you so much. I think we'll be wrapping up soon. What are you working on these days? Plans for 2020? Something exciting on the horizon? What are your dreams for this year?
Dreams for this year. Well, I'm teaching a lot this year. I'm going to be in Miami in February. I teach for Leica Academy, and then I'll be teaching in. I'm going to be doing a show in Bellevue, Washington State, with in a gallery out there, and I'm going to be teaching out there as well, and then try to work on the next book. I've, the big one that I want to do is the 20 years after 9/11. My work from 9/11. I've been going down there and shooting how it is now, the same streets that I shot on 9/11 and how they look now. And
that's a great idea. Absolutely.
Meeting the people that I photographed on 9/11 and working with them again. That's a big project, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it done in time, or it will be for the 25-year anniversary.
However long it takes, it's definitely an amazing idea. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
With this project, and thank you once more. Great conversation, great photography, and
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Phil. Have a great year.
You too.